Thank you all for your interest in the work of the Office of Civil Rights and Title IX. The main goal of the office is to foster a campus climate where individuals can work and go to school free of sexual harassment and any form of discrimination. We foster that environment in two main ways, through education and enforcement. It's our job to make sure that people understand their rights and responsibilities and to understand what constitutes sexual harassment and discrimination. When individuals behave inappropriately, it's also our job to be responsive. For context, we received 942 reports last year of alleged policy violations. That represents less than 2.5% of our campus community. As you know, our campus community is comprised of students, faculty, and staff, making that about 40,000 individuals. Of those 942 reports, 46 were investigated, resulting in 28 sanctions. Over the past 3 years, we have seen our reports stabilize. This tells me that our education efforts are paying off and that our community feels comfortable sharing issues with us. Still, even one incident of sexual harassment or discrimination is one too many. I feel fortunate to work at Mizzou because I have witnessed just how dedicated our university is to eliminating sexual discrimination, harassment in all forms. Our work could not be successful in a vacuum. It's the leaders who invite us to present to their groups, the volunteers who work closely with our office, the employee who observes and reports inappropriate behavior, and the student who is brave enough to speak up that makes this successful. We are grateful for all of their efforts. I'm also fortunate to work with leaders who are committed to being transparent and accountable. We are one of the few universities that issues this sort of detailed report, and that's what these annual reports are all about. With that, I am happy to take questions.
So can you talk a little bit about, like you just said, you guys get hundreds of complaints each year, hundreds of reports. What is your office's automatic response to those, or is it up to the complainant? And then what are some of the reasons why complainants choose not to go into the resolution process?
So it kind of everything depends on, we receive the report, and every report is unique and individual. So it really depends on what the nature of the report is about. And it can depend also on what that particular reporter wants to see happen, or, you know, just because someone makes a report, they may be making it on behalf of someone else. So we would then naturally reach out to who would be the complainant. And so it would depend on the nature of what the report was, the parties involved, and then obviously we would talk to the person that would be the complainant and see what their interest in our office being more involved in that would be.
Mm-hmm. Do you see a difference between when it's like a mandated reporter that's sending in the complaint versus a complainant that's reporting it themselves in terms of pursuing the resolution process with Title IX?
I think it can be, but I don't know that there's one consistent way that it always falls. It's also a good opportunity when someone is a mandated reporter and they make a report and we reach out. It's a great way to then offer services to that person. It's not always about doing an investigation. It's also connecting them with campus resources to just let them know that there are folks on this campus that they can talk to and can help them, and that's really kind of the purpose of that as well.
So you do respond to each report, whether it's from the person who actually reported it or the actual complainant?
If we can. You know, sometimes we will get reports and we don't know who the person is. There's no identifying information. It's that something has occurred, but we don't have anyone that we could maybe follow up with. So again, it would depend on each unique situation.
So in 16 through 17, there was, so it seems like there are a lot of complaints when it comes to sexual identity and gender, but it seems when I was looking at the number of students accused, it went from about 39% to this past year, 31%. Is there anything you guys have been doing to maybe help with that?
Well, we do have a lot of education efforts on our campus. I mean, while we are also in enforcement, we are also in prevention and education. And so we go out amongst our campus community and we talk to groups. We are invited in, or sometimes we invite ourselves in to get in front of various groups to talk about forms of discrimination, how our office works. And so I would be hopeful that those education efforts are resulting in potentially seeing that number decrease.
Okay, in your all's report, your press release, you decided to focus on race and national origin. Why is that?
Just because that was a number that stood out to us as something that we had seen a decline in those numbers, and so we just highlighted it.
Okay. Have you seen a decline in other numbers, or?
I would have to put the report in front of me. I think what we're seeing is, because we can go back now, our office is relatively new, and so we've only had the annual report for a few years, but we are starting to see kind of where we think the trend is going to be and where the numbers are going to be now that we've had this report consistently for a few years. And so that was just something that we noticed, and we wanted to just highlight that.
Right. 2015-16 school year was the first one, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Well,
There was one in 14.
2014-15? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When it was only Title IX and only students.
Gotcha.
Reported incidents of sex and gender discrimination is at a 3-year high in this report. Do you have an explanation for that?
I can't really speculate as to why the numbers would be that. There could be a lot of factors that go into that.
So I had a question about the investigations. You mentioned, so there were like over 900 violations reported, and
Right.
46 ended up being investigated.
Right.
And I believe it was 11 individuals who ended up being found, I guess, responsible for those actions. Is that like the ideal scenario, that so few end up in investigations and that the others go through conflict resolution processes?
Right. I mean, there are a lot of things that we can quickly resolve. We do accommodations for students, faculty, and staff on our campus, and so maybe it can be very quickly resolved, so we can talk to folks about maybe changing their residence hall, maybe things like that, or various accommodations that someone would need. And so it doesn't require us to do a full investigation. Sometimes another party may want someone to attend some sort of a diversity training or something like that on our campus. And so we can quickly have conversations with folks, put some accommodations in place, and everyone is very happy with that result. It is on those more serious matters where we may have to do the full investigation. And then of that, as you can see, not everyone that goes through the process is found responsible or in violation of a conduct violation.
When you say more serious matters, what are you referring to?
I think that you would see that it's typically the matters that go to hearing are non-consensual sexual assaults.
So, like you just said, obviously not all of these are ending up being investigating, and the resolutions for all of them vary depending on the circumstance and everything like that. When it comes to actually finishing those investigations and the hearing or the administrative review, is there any sort of rubric to determine what mandates an expulsion versus suspension, or training versus getting kicked off campus, or the no trespass rule? How do you sort of factor the weight of that versus what the punishment is, if that makes sense?
Well, I think there would be a lot of factors that would, every case is different. So it's not cookie cutter. So it would depend on the various facts and circumstances of that particular case, the severity of the policy violation, and then has this person had previous violations, not only maybe with our office, but maybe student accountability and success as well. And then we would look and see what have we done in maybe similar situations to make sure that there's a consistency in that regard.
Okay. So is there any sort of standard of this
equals
mandates
this,
expulsion?
No, there are no what you would per se sentencing guidelines that, okay, if you commit this offense, that it is really based on that individual set of facts and circumstances, because like I said, every case is so unique and different that we are looking at what happened in that case, the intent, has someone been put on notice before, is this someone who has done something similar before, and so all of those sorts of things are, is this person a danger to our campus community?
Right. And just to clarify, for administrative review, it's that person making the punishment?
Yes.
And with the panel, it's the panel that decides?
Right.
Okay. Do you see any variance between if the case goes one way or another in terms of those resolutions?
No, not really. And then each, there's also an appellate officer. So there's a good checks and balances in that regard as well. So the appellate officer is the same. So no matter what, if it's administrative or resolution and I'm making the decision, or if it's a hearing panel, it goes to the same person to review so we can make sure that everything is in line.
So when looking at the number of reports in general received in the past couple of years, the main two I've seen, the month-wise, have been like September and March, which are typically the fall semester versus the spring. Have you kind of looked into that at all, why that may be?
You know, it's really interesting now that we have a few years to go back and look at the numbers, and I think there's a couple of times where you would see the reports are just a couple off. You know, again, I would be speculating, you know, as to why the numbers would be like that, but you know, obviously, if students are back in session, it's probably going to be potentially higher because we have more people on our campus at that time.
When you're looking at reports with race and national origin, the numbers can be what they are, but do you feel that the campus climate has changed since 2015, since we had those protests on MU's campus?
You know, I wasn't here in 2015. I only became full-time permanent last May. So I really don't want to, you know, I wasn't here, so I don't know anything about what the climate was like then. I can tell you that we have good relationships with all of our student groups and our faculty and staff, and I feel that, you know, based on, you know, we have a large number of reporting, and that I think shows people's willingness to bring things to our attention and to have our office get involved.
So have you reached out to those campus organizations that you have good connections with for their input on campus climate when you're making a report like this one?
I mean, the report is what it is as far as what the numbers are,
yeah.
But I do make a point to meet with all of our student leaders. I go to meetings, we talk about what our office does, how we can be partners, we attend events that students have on this campus, so we're collaborative with all the student groups on our campus.
What has their input been or response been to the number of reports?
They don't know it yet. We haven't released it, so we don't. It's being released today, so I don't have any response from anyone yet.
Not specific to this report, but if the proposed rule changes in the U.S. Department of Education are implemented, how will that change the way your office operates and conducts investigations?
Well, we will, you know, maintain compliance with both federal and state law, and it's my understanding, you know, the comment period has closed, and they had over 104,000 comments, and so I think we're several months from any sort of guidance coming down. So we are following our collected rules as they are in place right now.
When it comes to, I guess, the number of reports that y'all get, just looking at the numbers for each violation, there's some fluctuations. Some went up in 2015 and then back down the next year and stuff like that. Are there reasons other than, say, the number of incidents that could explain this fluctuation in reports? Like, have y'all changed strategies in terms of how people know about how they can report things and stuff like that?
I think we do a really good job of hitting a lot of the main groups on our campus. You know, I know personally I went to all of athletics, staff, incoming law students, incoming grad students, all the new faculty, and talk about how do you report, what needs to be reported. And so we do a really good effort to get our name out there. We attend events where there's tabling, and so we can talk to incoming prospective students and their parents, and do a really good job to let people know how our office works, where we're located, how you report. And so I think that the message is out on our campus so that everyone knows what we do and how you can contact our office.
So you wouldn't say that there have been any changes in strategies that could explain changes in report numbers?
Not, I mean, I started in May, and as far as how reporting has worked, it's been fairly consistent.
The release mentioned that the administrative turnover was a reason for the delayed reports and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing anything different now in terms of data collection? I know there are the 3 different ways you can send in the complaints and everything. How are you guys streamlining?
Really the report was delayed because I was new to my role, and then we had a new director of investigations, Amber Lammers, who was really critical in creating the report. The only thing that has changed is we do have a new case management system, and so we're really excited about that. So our online reports through like Residence Life. We have a new form for that. And so I think that that will be a better tool for us. But other than that, nothing else has changed. People can still report the same way they could before, as far as online, coming into our office, calling our office. You can report anonymously. All of that will remain the same.
Of the people who typically seem to be accused of some sort of, you know what I'm talking about. But of those who seem to be like accused of something, the highest number after students seems to be staff and then faculty. Is there anything you guys are doing about that? You know, what are you doing maybe as like a deterring it?
We talk to faculty and staff as well, and we have sessions on, we will provide sessions within our division of IDE, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity, that people can, you know, voluntarily attend. We will have leaders of different departments ask us to come in and do specific trainings directed to their team. And so we continue those education efforts for both faculty and staff.
For faculty and staff who may continually have issues, is there something you guys do with those?
Well, they are treated like students in our equity resolution process. So if there was something that needed to be investigated, they would be subject to that as well.
Are you happy with these numbers? Are you happy with this report?
Well, I mean, you know, as I said in my opening statement, one report of sexual harassment or discrimination is one too many. And so we would, you know, ultimately the ultimate goal is to I guess put me out of business, for me to not have a job. We like to do our education and prevention efforts, and we hope that that's where we could put, you know, 100% of our time and efforts. And so I think I will never be happy if I see the numbers, you know, that people are having to report these things to our office.
In terms of the months of high reports when students return to school, and also in March around spring break, what are the efforts that are done during those months to get the message out to students, and what more might be done?
I think that there's always, we do a lot already, but like anything, there's always more that can be done. I think it's also, you know, we put a caveat in the report, but I think for clarification purposes too, you know, you mentioned March, for example. It doesn't mean that, you know, when things are reported, it doesn't mean that it necessarily happened on our campus or that it happened at that exact time. So you will read when you're looking at the report, it's when someone reports it, and then you're a member of our campus community. So like you said, if someone went somewhere on spring break and something happened, they could be reporting it, but it wasn't anything that happened here at Mizzou. But we work closely with our student groups to try to focus training on those times. And I also think too that as people come back to campus, they get more familiar with where things are on campus, and so timing of it could be, you know, again, speculating, but it could be because we now are getting ready to leave, or we know where this office is, and so there's just all kinds of factors that could go into why reporting happens when it does.